Lunch was fascinating. I sat at a table with a goth, a very pregnant madam and her husband, and a nice young man who, over the course of lunch, pulled out his freaking eye. Freaked me out. After lunch, we had Barry Williams, a very friendly old man who has been working in volunteer work, pushing to get equal parenting since the 1980s. Managed to get an amendment to the Family Violence Act in 2011. Really lovely, very quiet and very determined old man. And then we had Dr. Greg Canning, talked about the gender health gap. Talked about the development of the human embryo, how it developed into males and females. Talked about different legislation in Australia about health. In particular, of note was that in Australia, if you mutilate the genitals of a baby girl, you get 21 years in prison. If you mutilate the genitals of a baby boy, Medicare will give you $39.50. He talked for a while about the reasons for the health gap, that it's caused by other gaps, the funding gap, the action gap, the research gap, and the policy gap. And that men's public health policy is lagging about 21 years behind the women's public health policy. Then there was a very short break, and then the big star of the show, Karen Straughan, came on. And everyone was sitting down and ready for her when she started out telling us we were scum and that we should sit down and hurry up. Talked about essentially evolutionary psychology and why we are the way we are, which if you'll find lots of her videos online about that. And she did say something at the end which she hadn't mentioned before, which was with the red pill and the blue pill, there are in fact three choices. You can take the red pill or the blue pill, or you can choose to take neither. You can just quietly coast along, not really having your mind made up about anything. Then she said that she didn't want to speak to us riffraff anymore and walked off the stage. Finally, we had Miranda Devine as a speaker, who talked about the fright bats of Australia, the Australian feminists that demand respect for women just like them. But the big thing that the factual things that she talked about were where domestic violence is highest. That in repressed areas where there's high unemployment, high alcohol, high indigenous populations, you have 60 times more likely to be abused by a partner than in the more affluent, money-rich areas of Australia. And she also said that from 2005 to 2012, there's been a steady rate of drop for domestic violence against women, but over the same time period, there's been a 50% increase in reports of domestic violence against men, which is excellent that's actually being reported. I'll talk about the film in a minute.